Chapter 5 Morning Mist. Luna watches her children run free. The beat of padded paws courses along the forest floor. Trees bow and prey flees as hunters move through the night. The pace is set by the alpha, his coat, darker than the night, a beacon of safety. He knows the bright ways, the dreary ways, the right ways and the wrong ways. He beats the path and the pack follows. Together they are strong. Together they are free. Selena's eyes flashed open as rain droplets caused the fire to hiss. Her hand jerked the blade from her boot as she pulled herself forward. She looked around frantically for her pack. A soft whine escaped her throat for fear of traveling alone. "Morning, Scarlet." The voice of the old hunter hurt her ears. Her body tensed, but she put her dagger away. "Still afraid of the rain?" He laughed, causing her mind to spin in place. Her thoughts settled slowly, and she remembered where she was. Her father was with her, and the wolves were far away. "You know, that might work better on your hip," he said as she slid the blade back into her boot. Selena slapped her hip-borne hatchet in response. He smiled and handed her some meat on a stick. "Better eat your breakfast before we get washed away." "How bad is it?" she asked as she took the food and tore at the top piece. "Bad enough to keep our hoods up." Silence returned, broken by birds who warned of an approaching storm. Selena wolfed her food, finishing just as the drizzle increased into a steady downpour. Their belongings were off the ground before the fire washed out. They turned east and left muddy footprints behind them. The next hour was blessed with little but the sound of rain. A flash of lightning caused Selena to take a sharp breath and bend her legs as if to crouch. Thunder crashed, and she stepped closer to her father's side. "So it's the lightning, not the storm," her father observed. "Of course it is," Selena snapped irritably. "You think I'm afraid of water?" "Makes sense," her father smiled. "But you never liked to play in the rain like your sisters." The storm thinned, allowing them to hear each other more easily. "Guess I'm just weird all over." "You wouldn't be my little hunter if you weren't." Selena blushed at these words, and she hated herself for the reaction. Her father's praise warmed her heart as she was not used to hearing it. "I'll have to start taking you out again once you're married." Selena started laughing, and it darkened her father's face. "What's so funny?" "Me? Marry? Never!" She continued to laugh. "What did you do, Selena?" "Nothing yet," she managed to say as she brought her voice under control. "But I'll never say I do." "You're not ruining my hard work again, are you?" The irritation was apparent in his voice, but she refused to be intimidated. In fact, it made her start laughing again. It was not something she normally did at this volume. The thought of lunacy passed through her mind again. "I jumped out the window. He'll never find me out here." "The window," he repeated and grumbled something sour. "I know he's a simpleton, but you could at least try to be nice to him." "Simple?" Selena commented in an acid tone. "That's kind of you." "Sometimes a little kindness is all it takes." This from the man who kills for a living? This from a man who respects the creatures who die so that we may live. A short quiet settled between them until her father spoke again. "You know, you don't have to like him." "I don't," she snapped, upholding the sudden nature of her namesake. "I won't ever accept one of them, and the sooner they all just go away, the better." "Selena Hunter," her full name. "You've gone too far. They'll drive you out for sure." "Only if I go back," she said with a smug smile. "Planning on staying in the woods again? You know you can't." "You going to stop me?" "Don't have to," her father said with the type of confidence that made Selena want to defy him even more. "You'll start bleeding again and come crawling home." "Pah!" Selena's scoff was more a frustrated shout. Speckles of saliva burst from her mouth, and she spit because it felt good. "I'll just have to build a blood lodge." "Oh yeah?" the elder hunter chided the younger. "'Cause it worked so well last time." "I was 14." "And now you're 17.
"Almost 18, she reminded him stubbornly. "You can't keep telling me what to do."
"Of course I can. I'm your father."
"Oh, you." She grit her teeth and clenched her fists in frustration.
"It won't work," he said with a smug look of victory. "You'll come back. You always do."
"I do have a choice," Selena bristled. You told us we always have a choice. I choose not to come back. That's not what I meant, and you know it, her father growled as his calm began to waver. You'll come back home if I have to drag you. You'll have to catch me first. With that, Selina took off running. Her father lurched after her as if he had been expecting her to run, and she was surprised to discover he was keeping pace. The chase that had been going on for years had become a frenzied race. They rushed around trees and cleared holes that could have easily claimed their ankles. They dashed, slid, surged, and splashed, but neither slowed. Huffing strongly, they scrambled to the precipice of a mound. Reaching the top took the flight out of them. Mutual laughter bonded them as it had not for years, but it was not there for long. The view from the height caught them both and held them. Tendrils of horror nipped at their hearts and paled their complexion. A sickening cold raised fog and caused bursts of breath and mist. Claws rent Selina's guts to pieces, causing her to choke back the meat in her stomach. It was a struggle to draw breath. The air was thick with a decay her lungs wished to reject. Every inhale seemed pregnant with what was before her, tainting the body with pure wrongness. Her mind wanted to turn and run, but her eyes could not pull away. Gods and devils! Her father cursed loudly. What unnatural thing could do this? A beast, Selina managed to whisper. A terrible, horrible beast. No, her father groaned. One beast couldn't do all this. A pack? A pack, her father echoed, fear apparent in his voice. Selina fell to her knees. The shock seemed to drain the strength from her limbs. There was so much blood, rejected by the land, trickling steadily like the flow of time, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, and eventually it would run out. Life's red liquid, in limited volume, ran in rivers along the ground. Her own life ran before her eyes. She too would die someday. Her life would run its course, and then she would be picked off just like this. Maybe she would not see it coming. Just here one moment, then gone the next. Or she might linger in a sickbed, tired and useless, waiting for death to take her. They had found the missing animals. Hundreds of corpses, large and small, littered the landscape in bits and pieces. Some had been partially devoured, while others were merely torn open by large claws. The marks were bear-like, but some of those bodies were here as well. Predators and prey alike, sprawled in undignified positions, the terror of their final moments frozen on what was left of their faces. Nature rejects them, the old hunter said as his wits began to return. Look at those deer. Selina followed her father's gesture and studied the bodies. They're older, she murmured. Older and untouched, the older hunter observed in a clinical manner. No scavengers, no flies, nothing. They're just lying out in the open, cursed. He spat. Nature has forsaken this place. What do we do? Selina looked desperately to her father, whose face was creased in thought. Well? I'm thinking. He waved her off. His tone fouled as his eyes paced nervously. His face held no answers. They were both lost in the woods. We should leave here, he finally said as he moved back down the hill. We need to tell the others, and organize something. Something? Selina's fear brought about a cover of anger. Like what? You want to move more prey into the woods? Maybe draw the beasts out so they can kill us all? I don't know, Selina, her father said harshly, causing her to hold her tongue. Don't know what to do. We need to get back, and I need to think. They began to retrace their steps, but it was not where Selina wanted to go. She wanted to leave it all behind, and now she was running home to cower? It made her angry. It made her sick. An unnatural fog rose up thickly, surrounding them. It was as if the evil of this place had chosen them for the pile, the corpses that lay behind them. Suddenly, her father stopped. The fairy mist, he said as a cold sweat dampened his brow. He reached out and took Selina's hand. She pulled away, but he seized her wrist and looked her straight in the eye, dominating her with his will. Don't let go. If the mist takes you, I don't want us to be separated. The grip on her wrist relaxed, and Selina wrapped her fingers around his, offering her support to quell his fears. She was pretty sure she did not believe, but she didn't want to be alone in this either. They continued together, moving slowly, retracing their footprints,
The land sloped, causing them to climb a hill she did not remember descending. When they reached the top, they could see again. Before them sprawled the hundreds of corpses they had left behind. "We went in a circle?" Selina thought out loud. "The mist has us," her father groaned. "Don't say that!" she shouted, pulling her hand out of his. "This isn't some blasted fairy tale. We aren't surrounded by little people who want our shiny bits and sweets. We just have to sit and wait for the fog to dry out." "Selina," her father hissed, "keep your voice down." "Why?" she continued at the top of her lungs. "Is the big bad wolf gonna hear and eat us? Are trolls gonna come out from under the bridge?" She bent her bow and began unraveling the bowstring around her neck. "If it's a beast, we'll kill it. If it's men, we'll fight it. I'm not afraid of wolves, bears, bandits, or anything else with blood in its veins." She fastened the bow and nocked an arrow. "Come on!" she shouted at him, but he refused to prepare his bow. "Fine!" She knelt so that she could see down the hill. Anger pushed her pulse into her ears. The thump-thump drowned out any fear she might have known. The fog tumbled and rolled as if it were blown by some oversized toddler. The waiting began. If there was something out there, it would come like the deer in the meadow. Muscles cramped, but the hunter held her body solidly still. Breath was drawn slowly, deep, steadying the body and focusing the mind. Time passed. An agonizing silence teased her patience, like waiting for a splinter to be pulled by an idiot who was all thumbs. Finally something moved. The bowstring drew back on its own, reminding Selina that she had bruised her knuckles 4 days past. She clenched her fist, popping her knuckles. The sharp stabs of pain exploded, then softened into dull throbs. There was another sound. An unnatural howl echoed through the fog. It was deep, and resonated much longer than an average wolf. Fight or flight began to argue in the hunter's gut. Fight held firm, but flight nipped at her flanks. A response echoed from another location. 2 of them. A third. A fourth. A pack. The old hunter gripped his daughter's shoulder. "We have to go." His voice was low and raspy. "To the swamp, lass. We can lose them there." Determined strength pulled her to a stand, and she was able to relax her draw. She placed the arrow into the same hand as the bow. Her father took her arm. They descended the hill, and the fog wrapped around them like water. An eerie wetness settled under their skin and filled up their lungs with every unwelcomed breath. Their feet pounded into growth and mud as the older hunter pulled the trainee south. Anxiety of what she could not see expanded to include the ground with its rises and falls. The fog grew to a wet mist, and Selina could no longer see her father's face. His grip was there, though, and she held it with renewed importance. The howls stopped, but there was no sound of a chase. Are they still there? Are they just so quiet that we cannot hear? Human feet stumbled through wet mud, splattering its coolness along legs and boots. The sound of their feet would give them away. Selina could not hear the beasts. They will have to make noise in order to follow. I could shoot them in the swamp. I can get them there. Deeper they traveled, but there was no splatter of paws or hungry growls. Only a father and daughter running scared through a fog-filled swamp. The ground became hard. They had reached the other side. Trees, bushes, stones, and grass. It was all different here. The feeling of being prey faded as the fog began to thin. Their pace slowed, and Selina could see her father's face as it focused on the path. A tree became their refuge. They leaned against its solid frame, panting. Only then did her body's fatigue begin to be known. She could stand no longer. Her back slid down the bark and rested on stones and roots. I think we lost them," she finally dared between gasps for breath. Her father did not respond. Her eyes drifted over to his face and saw that it was pale and pitted. The strength that had pulled them through danger was used. Now he drew his legs to his chest and shook. "Father?" she said quietly, but he did not respond. He just looked out into the unfamiliar terrain and trembled. Selina crawled over to him, set down her bow, and wrapped her arms around him. "It's okay, Papa. I'm here."